Welcome back to War Room Pandemic, episode 154, Friday, May the 1st, the year of our Lord 2020. I'm Raheem Kassam, sitting in for Stephen K. Bannon, who is on special assignment. Got Jack Maxey, Jason Miller here in the War Room, Fort Defiance. And I want to thank our broadcasting partners, the John Fredericks Radio Network, America's Voice, which is on Dish Channel 219, FM 99.1, 103.9 in Chicago, nexus.org, and on G News and GTV, translated into Mandarin and blown through the firewall for all the Chinese patriots out there fighting against Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. I'm getting a few heckles on my text, Jason, from Jack Posobiec, who says, "You're pronouncing Xi Jinping incorrectly." And I said, that's just my accent. I still call it Bombay. I still call it Peking. I still call the eastern seaboard of the United States the colonies, so you're just going to have to get used to it. We have a flurry of great guests and topics for you. I want to throw it to Jason and our next fantastic guest. Is it Dr. Admiral or Admiral Dr. Jason?
Admiral Doctor. We established that after during the commercial break, after our last segment here, as we're going back and forth. But very pleased to bring in congressional candidate in Texas 13, Admiral Dr. Ronny Jackson. Ronny, do we have you?
Yeah, well, I'm here. Thank you guys for having me.
Attention on deck, gentlemen.
Well, it's always an honor.
As you were.
Well, it's always an honor to have Admiral Dr. Ronny Jackson, President Trump's former doctor, in the White House. Admiral Doctor, want to get right to this. Texas is reopening today. It's the first of the month. You have a lot of Texans who aren't able to pay rent. We've got to get people back, got to get people working. This isn't just the American way. This is the Texas way. But we're reopening today, or at least going into, we've been big fans of Governor Abbott, what he's been doing, but Texas still hasn't hit the 14-day mark. Talk to us about what today means, how life is going to start changing in Texas.
Well, like you said, Texans are anxious to get back to work. We don't have any problem leading the nation on this. You know, Texans lead from the front, and that's what we've always done, and that's what we'll continue to do. I'm here in Amarillo, and my district includes Amarillo and Wichita Falls, all of the Panhandle in North Texas. We're going to get back to work today, and we're going to do it smart. We're not going to go back to the way we used to do things right away. We're going to be cautious. We're going to spread things out in our businesses a little bit, so we maintain some social distancing. We're going to wash our hands and use hand sanitizers. We're going to allow people to still wear a mask if they want to, things of that nature. We're going to take all those common sense approaches, but we're not going to sit around and let our economy just fall apart at our feet anymore. We are going to get out and we are going to make something happen now. We're going to get the Texas economy up and running again. And everyone here is super excited about it.
Admiral, I want to get back to how this is going to impact your daily life. And so take us, for those around the country, people who are in Ohio, maybe people in Florida. We're going to have Darrell, Issa from California on in a bit to give us the lay of the land there, assuming he's not out surfing today since Governor Newsom shot that down. How is this actually going to change daily life in Texas?
Well, I hope that, our big changes to daily life have already happened. I hope the way it's going to change daily life for us now is it's going to get us back to what we were before, where we were before. A lot of people walk around and I hear people on TV and some of the talking heads talking about like things will never be the same in the United States again. We're not going to shake hands, do things like that again. I can tell you right now, I'm going to shake people's hands. That's what we do in Texas. I'm going to look people in the eye. I'm going to shake their hands when I get to know them and when I tell them about myself. So I'm excited about getting this going again. We're going to get our campaign up and running. We had tons of meet and greets and all kinds of debates and candidate forums and everything set up before this happened. That all fell off the schedule. And so I'm anxious to get that going again because that's the part of campaigning that I enjoy the most. And I think that's what people here in Texas expect is for you to get out to the diners and the restaurants and the feed stores and go in and talk to people, introduce yourself, shake their hand, and tell them all about your what you can do for them. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to get back to normal.
Again, we're on with Admiral Dr. Ronny Jackson, running for Congress in Texas 13, used to be President Trump's doctor in the White House. Ronny, want to get to your groundbreaking plan to redirect all drug manufacturing from China back to the U.S. This is such a big deal. We've talked about this on War Room Pandemic over and over. The fact that what this has been a huge wake-up call is the fact that we're dependent on other countries for such basic national security type issues. I thought this plan, this was really the main reason we want to get you on. You got our attention. Walk us through this and what you're advocating.
Well, I just think, people are looking around and there's opportunity here. This has been a big devastation to our economy in a lot of areas, but it's also going to provide a lot of opportunity. And one of the things we realized here is that, we cannot rely on China. I, even as a physician, was completely unfamiliar with how much we relied on China and India and other countries for our pharmaceutical supply chain. And that's completely unacceptable. I mean, if anything, qualifies as a national security issue, that should be it. I mean, they could do great damage to our country intentionally if they wanted to via that means. And, we already know from what's going on, we can't trust, they put this virus on the world. They brought things down. They did a lot of stuff up front to allow it to propagate. And really, they're responsible for where our economy's at in a large part right now. So we need to, retaliate, to the extent that we can, as soon as we can, whether that means canceling debt or whatever else that means, I don't know. But one of the things it means is we need to take those industries like our pharmaceutical industry back from China and bring them back over here. My point is there's no reason why Amarillo, Texas, Wichita Falls, some of the areas up in my district can't lead the way on that. We are perfectly positioned. I'm here in Amarillo right now. I'm working with some folks here that are already in the pharmaceutical industry here, and they understand how it works. We want to bring a large commercial pharmaceutical manufacturing capability here. It's going to diversify our economy. We work off oil and gas and farming and ranching here. The more we can diversify our economy here locally, the better we're going to be when something like this happens again. We are perfectly positioned for this. We have low taxes here. We have a business-friendly environment in Texas. Amarillo's in the center of the country. We've got the interstate system here, the railroads, we've got airports, we've got large university systems here with medical schools, dental schools, veterinary schools. We are perfectly positioned to lead the way on bringing our pharmaceutical industry back to the United States. And I think that we'd be fools here if we didn't take advantage of that opportunity. There's going to be a lot of legislative pressure to make that happen and some real financial incentives to make it happen. And I intend, as the candidate and hopefully carrying on as the representative for the 13th Congressional District of Texas, to make sure that that happens.
Admiral Jack Maxey here. Listen, I just got to say, I love your patriotism. I love the fact that here's this guy from Texas. He's given his whole career to the United States Navy and protecting this country. And guess what? He's not done yet, America. He's going to bring our pharmaceutical manufacturing back. I want all of our listeners out there to support Admiral Jackson in his attempt at Congress, because we need more people like you. And you're an inspiration, sir. You're making me feel super confident after sitting on my knees for the last 2 months. Love it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Ronny, want to get into, look, you're out there in West Texas. We've talked a lot about oil and what that's doing to the U.S. energy economy, also the interplay with the Saudis. I said yesterday, and I stand by this, that I think this was economically speaking an act of war. The games that the Saudis were playing with the Russians to go and try to tank the U.S. oil industry. How is this impacting life out there? And if President Trump were to call you up right now and say, Ronny, you're out there in West Texas, you're the congressman, what are folks telling you? What would you tell President Trump on what you got to do on the energy side?
I would say we got to get this economy going again, and we've got to get supply and demand where they need to be again. Specifically, we need demand to go back up. People out here are getting absolutely punished right now. I mean, so many people here rely on oil and gas as their complete livelihood, and when it goes down like it has, I mean, people are just they don't have any source of income. A lot of them, and the folks that run it out here, they're just taking a huge hit. So we have got to get oil and gas back up. And you're absolutely right. This was no coincidence. We took a big hit from the coronavirus, and it just so happens that while we were down and having to deal with this coronavirus issue is the exact same time that Russia and Saudi Arabia decide to have a trade war, and start driving the price of oil down and dumping all this cheap oil onto the market. So, we've done a great job in the United States of becoming energy efficient and energy independent here, and people have worked hard to make that happen. That's also a national security issue. We've done that, but we need ways that we can control the global market so that they cannot do this to us again, where they just dump so much oil onto the market that we have nowhere to go with our oil. And obviously, like I said, it's compounded by the fact that demand is down so much because of the virus and stuff. So number one, we have got to get this virus issue taken care of. We've got to get people back to work again. We've got to get demand back up and running. And that.
Did we lose the Admiral Doctor? I think we may have lost the feed there.
Do we still have? Oh, is he back? We have the Admiral.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, just conclude that thought
I got
first.
you. Yeah.
Admiral, can I ask you a real quick question? Sorry.
Go ahead, Admiral Doctor.
One of our listeners, it's a big concern considering the amount of agriculture that's being repressed in Texas. What's going on there? We're hearing a lot of stuff about people not being able to get their cattle to market and stuff like that. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I sure can. Well, it's another issue with with the supply and demand thing. We basically we have all this cattle here, right? And then we have the coronavirus that comes in and it starts hitting some of our packing plants. And our packing plants, the production drops off. The cattle that are coming out on the other side that are being slaughtered to go to market, they're going to market being slaughtered so that, we can get them to the grocery stores and stuff. That number drops precipitously. Well, when that happens, because of the coronavirus and because they're shutting down part of their production plant, then supply just starts building and the cattle have nowhere to go. I mean, the ranchers can't get rid of them right now. The feedlots are full. They can't take them. The packing houses are full. They're running as many through a day as they can, but they are running under, limited resources right now because of the coronavirus. So I think the president's done a great thing. He's reached out to the packing industry. He's relieved them from some of the liability that might be associated with this and told them they don't have to worry about that. He's mandated that they get back up to running 100% and start getting this done. But once again, it's a supply and demand issue that's related to this virus, and we've got to get rid of it. And we need to diversify a little bit too. I mean, we have a few of the packers, that are controlling a lot of the market right now, and we need some of the smaller packers up and running. That's what I'm talking about out here. Is we got to get more packers out here that are more small business packers, so that whenever something happens at one of the big packing plants, it doesn't take down a quarter of the industry. So that's one of the things we're looking at.
Thank you.
Yep. Admiral Doctor, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us how folks can get active with you. How do they follow you on Twitter? They want to learn more about Admiral Dr. Ronny Jackson.
Yeah, so if you go to my website, www.ronnyjackson, RONNY Jackson 4 FOR Texas TEXAS 13.com, RonnyJackson 4 Texas 13.com. You can find links there to my Twitter and my Facebook, and I encourage you to go there. You can see me what I stand for on the issues, and you can follow me on social media. Please get out there and do it.
Fantastic. Admiral Doctor, thank you so much for joining us
here
this morning on War Room Pandemic. Jack Maxey, I've noticed, gets so excited to have a commanding officer present. He just cannot help himself.
Hey, I'm an old Navy guy. What can I say?
You are definitely an old Navy guy. Lots to unpack there. We've got lots to go through as well for the rest of the show as well. Jack, I want to get the audience teed up for the next segment as well. We skipped from the last episode, our D block remdesivir Operation Warp Speed. Just in the minute and a half we've got before the next segment, just tee us up, Jack. What is going on with what is Operation Warp Speed, and what's the latest on the quote unquote silver bullet?
Well, Operation Warp Speed is obviously to get this stuff into production as quickly as possible. Remdesivir has been out there for many years. It was originally created to fight the Ebola virus. It was not that effective. We've seen some studies in China, which I have discredited, I think, hopefully, to the best of my ability. We first tried it on a guy in Seattle right at the start of things. He survived. And hopefully, look, none of these things are a silver bullet. These are tools in the toolbox of free Western doctors who are going to conquer this. It's that simple.
In the next segment, we're going to get to more of that. I also want to get to President Trump saying yesterday that he's seen evidence that the coronavirus emanated from a lab in China. We have the clip on that as well. We'll be playing for you this morning, and also getting into the latest as it pertains to what we can expect this afternoon. Kayleigh McEnany will be taking the stage for the first time at 2 o'clock, the new White House press secretary. We're going to see what Jason Miller knows about the inside scoop on that one. Stay tuned here. War Room Pandemic. Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam. We'll be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
You're in the War Room. We appreciate all of your comments, thoughts, opinions, any articles that you want us to cover that you think we're missing. Hashtag War Room Pandemic on Twitter. We check that all day, every day. We got Greg Mans, who literally goes through each and every single one of them. So give him some work to do today. Hashtag War Room Pandemic. I want to now go to the president's mindset on all of this. We heard yesterday something that I thought was pretty bombshell news. But actually looking at the media coverage of it, nobody really took it all that seriously. I mean, you didn't see the flash. The only flash I saw was from Britain's Sky News. CNN didn't flash, nothing else on my phones. But I thought this was a pretty big deal, not just because of what it means about the coronavirus and its origins. We know the origin story of the coronavirus is sketchy. I think that colors the response from the media at the moment. But what this also goes to is the president's mindset on this, the president's mindset on China, on the WHO, and America's role in the world. And ahead of a presidential election, that is an incredibly important thing to drill into. Shame on the media who haven't taken this seriously. But Jason, let's play this clip and then bring in Roger Robinson to discuss the president's latest moves as it pertains to China. He's the chairman of the Prague Security Studies Institute and was one of the architects behind Ronald Reagan's assailing of the Soviet Union financially and economically. Jason, let's tee this up.
Correct. But we're looking at exactly where it came from, who it came from, how it happened, separately and also scientifically. So we're going to be able to find out.
And my question is, have you seen anything at this point that gives you a high degree of confidence that the Wuhan Institute of Virology was the origin of this virus?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And I think that the World Health Organization should be ashamed of themselves, because they're like the public relations agency for China. And this country pays them almost $500 million a year, and China pays $8 million a year. And whether it's a lot or more, it doesn't matter. It's still, they shouldn't be making excuses when people make horrible mistakes, especially mistakes that are causing hundreds of thousands of people around the world to die. I think the World Health Organization should be ashamed of themselves.
The end of history, the globalist situation falling apart all over the world, from the European Union to the World Health Organization and beyond, and obviously President Trump standing up there and saying, yes, I have seen evidence of this coming from a lab. The World Health Organization should be ashamed of itself. Another cold shot from Jack Maxey when he told us on, what was it, episode 2 or 3 of War and Pandemic about Dr. Tedros and his links to the CCP. I want to bring in now Roger Robinson, the chairman of the Prague Security Studies Institute and one of the authors of President Reagan's the National Security Council strategy against the Soviet Union, the economic and financial strategy. Roger, thank you so much for joining us here this morning on War and Pandemic.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Roger, just to begin with, the story coming out right now over the last 24 hours, less than even. I'm going to read from the CBS website, exclusive: White House to block federal pension fund from expanding China investments. For the financially ignorant amongst us, such as myself, could you explain a little bit what that means, how big this is, the ramifications of it, and why now?
I'm happy to do so. This was a seismic event. I mean, this has to do with the money, which is the centerpiece of the CCP and how it remains a going concern. There was, for the last 9 months, a high drama playing out whereby the International Fund of the Federal Thrift Savings Plan, which is the sort of 401k plan for some 5.8 million federal employees, it's about 700 billion overall. 50 billion of that was going to be transferred from an index that captured developed country companies, that is, our allies, no emerging markets, to the so-called MSCI All Country World ex-US Index. Even though it's a long name, the essence of it is that it captures emerging markets like China and Russia. And sadly, within that list of Chinese and Russian companies are a number of bad actors. That is, U.S. sanctioned companies for national security and human rights abuses, PLA-affiliated advanced weapons manufacturers, human rights abusers of the type that are enabling concentration camps in Xinjiang for 1.5 million Uyghurs with their surveillance cameras atop the walls of those camps. And these types of egregious offenders were going to be, in a sense, a mandatory investment for anybody with international exposure in the so-called thrift savings plan. of our federal employees, including our uniformed military, were going to have their retirement dollars invested in companies that were, for example, building the weapon systems designed to kill them in the event of a conflict. Nobody really did any diligence at MSCI. No one did any diligence on the Federal Retirement Thrift Investment Board, which administers the TSP. They just took the index as it was, with no disclosure, no nothing, and decided to transition the entire international fund into this highly flawed index. And so that's where we were until the last 24 hours. And there were a number of the president's most fervent supporters that were very alarmed over this because there was the feeling that he wasn't getting the straight scoop. We don't know exactly why precisely. It hasn't been a universally accepted idea within the administration how reckless and bad idea this really is. And so there was the concern that he wasn't fully able to appreciate what was afoot here. Well, that changed. And when the president did understand the stakes here and the ironies and the tragedy of the type that I'm describing to you now, he said that he was not only baffled, but I think the term incredulous was used, that he felt it must be stopped, which is exactly the posture that everyone was hoping for and expecting. And the president stood up tall on this and said, not on my watch, in effect. Now, he's going to probably use an executive order to interdict this because the TSP board, as I call them for short, was accelerating the movement of this money, hoping to present the president and the opponents with a fait accompli. That is, well, the money's already moved. It's too costly and disruptive to the markets to unwind such a transaction, which is also specious, by the way. And they were going to basically think that this was the way it was going to be. And unfortunately, Wall Street and Beijing were on the same page on this one. And it was up to a lot of patriots who appeared here, and those like in the White House, the Mark Meadows, the NSC, others, who really deserve to be commended. But most importantly, the president himself. I mean, this was a banner day for the president. This was something that was going to be a tragic miscarriage of justice almost, in the sense of these retirement dollars being used for such insidious purposes, with the Chinese in effect rewarding them at the very moment that they've unleashed this scourge on the world.
Roger, this is Jason Miller.
The name of your war room.
Roger, this is Jason Miller. Want to jump in?
That's where we sit at this stage. Thank goodness the president's come to the rescue.
We have a couple of minutes here left. Roger, I want to play this clip from this new ad that America First, the Trump Super PAC, just put out talking about China and prosperity and our propping them up, and then get your reaction to it.
In just over 30 years since I first came to China, your progress has been nothing short of incredible. I believed in 1979, and I believe now, that a rising China is a positive development. The United States should undertake to make it easier for Chinese business people to obtain visas and travel to the United States. It is in our self-interest that China continue to prosper.
America First.
So, Roger, you were there on the front lines when President Reagan was standing tall against the Soviet Empire and the economic battle between the two. Where do you see us going as far as the two economies? We've talked a lot about the Thucydides trap. We've talked about what's the 21st century really going to be based on. Where do we, and obviously you're here talking about this potential executive order, making sure that U.S. retirements are invested in China with the very companies that might be trying to undermine us. Very quickly, and right to the point here, where do you see ultimately this economic competition going?
Well, first, I was pretty impressed by that apology for China. There were the same kind of individuals at the height of Soviet power telling us that this was some kind of elaborate misunderstanding. As far as the nature of the CCP and China's objectives in the world, they're very clear. This is a existential threat to the United States. It's our foremost adversary. It is a Soviet Union equivalent. It is a totalitarian police state bent on the undoing of all we hold dear in our democratic institutions. Let's start there. So the notion that we're moving as much as $3 trillion from our debt and equity markets into the coffers of Beijing so that they can roam the world with an unlimited checking account to compromise countries, regions, and even continents like Africa is ludicrous at the face of it. We were picking up the tab for the Soviets. We are picking up the tab to a large extent for the Chinese today. That's the kind of thing that has to stop.
Roger, thank you so much, Roger Robinson, for joining us here on War Room Pandemic, chairman of the Prague Security Studies Institute. Just tell our audience, we've got 10 seconds, where they can find more from you.
Yes, our website is pssiwashington.org, and I have a company that specializes on China and Russia transactions globally called rwradvisory.com.
Thank
that
you.
Will provide a good...
War Room Pandemic will be back right after this break.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back, War Room Pandemic, episode 154 on Friday, May the 1st, May Day, the year of our Lord 2020. It's opening day in a lot of America right now, and we have our next guest, former congressman and to-be congressman. Darrell Issa joins us now. Jason, I want to throw it to you and the good congressman.
Congressman and Chairman Issa, former chairman of the House Oversight Committee, running in California 50 to get back to Congress where we need you. Congressman, I want to dive right into this. You got the prized retweet from President Trump yesterday talking about where you've been able to work with California Governor Gavin Newsom, where you've disagreed. Take us through your thoughts right now on this 4-phase reopening plan, and then we want to get into some of the details like the beaches.
Well, you know, the president set out his return to work strategy, and the return to work strategy nationally is extremely good, but it leaves some further decisions to the states. In the case of Gavin, he takes part of it, but then he goes further because he's essentially almost saying you need a vaccine to get back to work. And that's very concerning. It's one of the reasons that both the state and the county are now planning to be well into June before we fully reopen. And as you were alleging mentioning, they've closed parks and beaches, decided that separation means you're stuck in your home or in your backyard, not in fact at a public park 20, 30 feet away from somebody else. And that's become a real point of contention, not just for libertarians, but for people who realize that the governor is saying one thing, but his delays could in fact cause California to be economically disadvantaged over the rest of the country and the rest of the world.
And Congressman, look, we'd like to call balls and strikes here. We've been pretty favorable as far as Governor Newsom and a lot of the approach that he's taken. He's avoided a lot of the outbreaks that we've seen in other places around the country. But lately, it seems like the wheels are coming off the bus a little bit here. Explain to me, where I believe you're in Oceanside right now, explain to me why you could go out and go surfing right now, but someone up the coast in Huntington Beach in Orange County could not. What's the explanation there?
Well, I want to be positive in this. Yesterday morning, the governor intended to close all the beaches in the state. There was pushback, myself included, both tweeting and texting the governor that this was excessive, that there had been no such problems in California, except his perception of what happened on 2 beaches in Orange County. And he didn't know them personally. He simply knew what he saw on television. Between yesterday morning and yesterday afternoon, he lowered the closing to just the Orange County beaches. The problem there, Jason, is that the local authorities saw no problem with controlling people appropriately on the beach. So notwithstanding what somebody might have seen on a television show, the fact is fire, police, beach authorities thought that they was handled properly, and that puts the governor in a bad position to preempt local authorities over his interpretation secondhand.
And again, we're on with Congressman Darrell Issa,
and yes, I can surf this morning in Oceanside. I could not have surfed in Hermosa.
Congressman, one of the things I want to go to, look, you're a tech guy. A lot of folks might not realize that your company, Directed Electronics, at one point had, I think you had like a 40% share of the U.S. auto security market. You have 53 or 54 patents to your name. So you're a big brain guy. You're very smart.
All expired, Jason.
Okay, well, great. Then Xi Jinping and the rest of them are mass.
I'm an old tech guy.
Excellent. As I see the BlackBerry on your desk there, that's still looking good. But want to go to, look, as you're seeing a number of these technologies, we saw about this study up at Cedars-Sinai where they're actually talking about pumping the UV light into intubated patients. As you're following the remdesivir, all the other developments with Operation Warp Speed, what are you most encouraged about on some of these different technologies or treatments to help people survive coronavirus?
What I'm most encouraged is that our industries, and you mentioned UV, bio, pharma, they're all looking and saying, what do we already have that we can repurpose? What works against viruses or in some other way, whether it was Ebola or AIDS or SARS, what is it that's worked elsewhere that we can quickly test and see what the effect is on this virus? This kind of thinking, rather than pure research that might take years, only looking at this virus and trying to come up with a new cure, is the right approach if we need something quickly. And it appears as though many of the oldest ideas, if you go into a meatpacking plant and you want to prevent the growth of disease on meat, you use UV light, and it's very effective. The reality is testing that makes sense because it is, in fact, a known killer of this virus.
Congressman, you have a picture of former President Ronald Reagan on the wall back behind you here. What would former President Reagan think about this phase 4 that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are talking about to bail out blue states around the country?
You know, Ronald Reagan always had a smile when he talked about America being better and its best days ahead of it. That includes the idea that you're not going to simply give in to somebody's demands because they have power. You might remember that Ronald Reagan early on had some extremely highly paid individuals, our air traffic control. This is back in the 80s, and they're making like $60,000 a year, and they went on strike. And he replaced them all. And he replaced them all because what he said was, America can do it. We will not be held hostage. And I think that he would look and say, we're not going to be held hostage to large work programs you need, when in fact America wants to go back to work. The other thing is, I think President Reagan would be very targeted in any monies he'd make available in phase 4. And I'll just give you an example, Jason, if you look at the amount of money that has been handed out to corporations to pay their people, this PPP, if we had targeted that by limiting it only to those who were going to attest that but for this money, their people would be laid off, meaning they were otherwise not productive, rather than, in some cases, companies are receiving this money, their people are working full time, and we're just paying their people for working. That's a huge portion of this that's going to be spent that way. I don't believe we should do it the next time, anything close to that broadly, and I think the American people would support us, that we're only helping people get back to work in the next phase, not helping people stay at home and paying them, in some cases, more money to be at home than coming to work.
Congressman Issa, you mentioned Ronald Reagan. One of the things I've since been lacking in this whole thing, and one of the things I loved about him, many of us forget the terror that we lived under. I was in the military at the time, thinking that we were going to go to war with the Soviet Union. And Reagan always had a way of inspiring confidence in people and encouraging people to have courage rather than to live in fear. And I think that's one of the messaging things that's been lacking in this. I think we've promoted this kind of fear. and we put the American people into a state of fear that is really unreasonable compared to the risk. And I'd like to start seeing some of our public figures being a little bit more encouraging in that regard. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's one of the reasons that now that the numbers are available, now that we know that this is not an equal opportunity disease, this is a disease that is extremely dangerous to the elderly and the infirmed, and those particularly with compromised oxygen capability in their lungs. The fact that less than 100 people under 25 have died, less than 1,000 people under 45 have died. On the USS Teddy Roosevelt, we lost one sailor out of 900 infections, and he was 41 years old. Now, I'm not trying to minimize these deaths, but let's put it in perspective. If we had known that there was essentially, statistically, virtually a zero chance of people under 25 in good health dying, we would have absolutely never shut down this way. We would have made decisions about sheltering our elderly. We would have done a better job with our extended care facilities where so many of these people have died, and we would have continued producing in a lot of places, including many of the factories that have been shuttered.
Congressman Darrell Issa, tell folks where they can find you on social media, your website. How do people get in touch with you?
You know, anytime you do at Darrell Issa or Darrell Issa, you're going to see my Twitter come up. You're going to see my contribution pages come up. You'll see a few nasty things come up. That's part of the business. But if you go to darrellissa.com, what you're going to find is an opportunity to join our return to the majority in support of President Trump. That's really what my campaign is about. I left Congress voluntarily to serve in the Trump administration, blocked by Senator Menendez, and made a decision to return to Congress because I can do a great deal of good to support this president there. And at the next State of the Union, I can sit next to Bob Menendez, who kept me from serving in the administration, smile and say, we're back in the majority, you're not. And that's what I'm looking forward to in the days and weeks to come. We're going to retake the majority in the House so the president's agenda can, in fact, occur again, and we can make America great again coming out of this pandemic.
Thank you. Congressman Darrell Issa, appreciate your joining us this morning.
Anytime.
Well, great interview with the congressman there also. And I just want to give people an update as well, because we usually do on the show. Dow is down about 508 at the moment, 63,000 deaths in the United States so far, passing that mark at the moment. Jack, I wanted to come to something that you picked up on this morning. I tweeted yesterday as well. This is why you've got to follow all the international coverage of this as well as much as possible, because there are scoops that come from all over the place that you might not necessarily see in the U.S. media as it tries to shape the narrative around this thing against the president of the United States. The exclusive from Sky News in the United Kingdom. The World Health Organization, quote, not invited to join China's COVID-19 investigations. Quoting from Sky News here, China has refused repeated requests by the World Health Organization to take part in investigations into the origins of COVID-19. The World Health Organization's representative in China has told Sky News, I want to quote Dr. Gowden Galea here, we know that some national investigation is happening, but at this stage we have not been invited to join. Jack, when we look at what Secretary Pompeo said last week about the Chinese not sharing the original strain of the coronavirus, this is against World Health Organization rules that were fashioned, I think, in about 2004 on something like this. How do we have a situation where we're still not getting international cooperation from the Chinese on this? And you know, we spoke with Roger Robinson about the implications, about the financial implications, about how we can bring this back into our power somehow. But this isn't being covered on CNN. Sky News is covering this in the UK. Tell us a little bit more. We've got about 30 seconds.
Well, the irony is the doctor said that they don't even believe it came from the lab, but they think that they need to see the logs of the lab, right? Just to see the scientific logs. They won't even let the World Health Organization see these things. And the World Health Organization is basically a partner with the CCP. So you know they don't want us to see it. It just, to me, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yep, absolutely. So in the next segment, ladies and gentlemen, We'll get to what we expect at 2 p.m. today in the White House. The new press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, makes her first podium briefing there in the White House. And Jack, I think you have something special for us in the next segment as well that we want to get to. War Room Pandemic, hashtag War Room Pandemic, warroom.org, pandemic.warroom.org, across all the platforms, YouTube, Facebook, all the podcast platforms. You'll find us. Make sure you share us. We'll be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Welcome back to War Room Pandemic. It's about that time in the show where we realize how short an amount of time we actually have left. The time flies here at Fort Defiance. Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon on special assignment. I can assure you he's not in quarantine. He doesn't have the Rona. On special assignment. You'll hear more about that in the future. Want to go now to what's taking place this afternoon. Some breaking news as well that we're going to get to in the final couple of minutes here. We're just verifying something here in the War Room, and we'll try and bring you some information pertaining to Joe Biden's donations over the course of the last month. Really interesting stuff. You're going to want to pay attention to it. We're crowdsourcing a lot of this information, so stick with us. We'll hopefully bring you that. Jason, what do we have this afternoon in the White House, and what can we expect at the press briefing?
Kayleigh McEnany, new White House press secretary, will be doing her first podium briefing at 2 p.m. This is significant because it's the first time in over a year that there's been a press secretary delivering this. Stephanie Grisham, who is now back over as the chief of staff to First Lady Melania Trump, never did a podium briefing. She did plenty of on-the-record work, but it went through a phase there where the White House just wasn't doing that. So we saw a couple images over the last day or two where Kayleigh came out to the podium. They were measuring to see how big this is. Now, I will tell you, I would assume that they've been doing some drills with Kayleigh running through this. Kayleigh's obviously someone who's sparred on CNN. She's done interviews all over the place. I think that the media will probably be pretty respectful with Kayleigh today. I think that, look, you're going to have a couple of your jerks that always go and ask their jerky questions. But I think that, look, they're not going to be slow-pitch softball, but I think they will do it. I'll tell you one moment from back during the transition when we're getting Sean Spicer ready for his first press briefing. And this was over one of those federal buildings, and they had the whole thing with a bunch of mock journalists, and Sean's up there at the podium, and afterwards came by, and he's like, what do you think? How'd it go? I was like, Sean, hold on a minute, buddy. And I took my pocket square out of my pocket. I was like, Sean, you got to have a pocket square. I can't let you go up there to the podium without a pocket square. And from there, a legend was born. And that's when he started wearing the pocket square. I literally gave him my pocket square. I was like, you have to rock one of these every day. It's just, come on, man. You got to look the part, be the part, bro.
We have some great moments in history that will be told on this show in lots of different anecdotes like that, and I think that's a really great one as well. Jack, what do we got? What do we got that you wanted to come back to in this segment?
Well, yesterday we were talking about the two previous pandemics in recent history, not the 1918, but the 57-58 and the 68-69, and I pointed out that the country did not respond the way that it did now, and many people said, it wasn't as bad. Well, I ran the numbers, and I want everyone to know it was much worse. 1957-58, according to the CDC, the U.S. lost 116,000 people to the Shanghai flu, which arrived in U.S. coastal cities in the summer of 1957. At that time, we had a population of 175,000 people. The equivalent loss of life today would be 220,000 plus. In 1968-69, with the Hong Kong flu pandemic, most of the victims were 65 years and up. The U.S. dead were 100,000. The population was 200 million. Today, that would put it at 165,000 people. And I'd love to know from our listeners, does anybody remember even a panic in any of those years? I certainly don't.
I want to get to this, and thank you, Jack. That's a good follow-up on what we were discussing yesterday. I want to get to this now very quickly with the time we have left. This rumor, this chatter, we're trying to stand this information up. I've got the FEC documents in front of me here without having had the requisite time off air to go through this. We're just going to float this right now. We'll see if it stands up. This is on you guys to go away and look at this thing. We're going to crowdsource this story, this information out there. But the rumor is that since, and we focused on Joe Biden a lot in the first segment of the 153 episode. So if you missed it, go back, listen. We laid it all out. The The rumor is that there has been in the last month, Jason, an extraordinary amount of money that Joe Biden and his campaign has had to refund the contributions of individuals and persons other than political committees. In the last month alone, and looking at the FEC document right in front of me, you're looking at about $815,862. We'll put that into context. The Trump campaign, $9,100. Do you think, and again, we're going to stand this up, just what we've got so far. Do you think, in your experience, you spent a long time in this game, in politics, is that something that happens often?
No, that's an absurd amount of money. And look, I think Joe Biden is going to have additional criticism and scrutiny following his comments today. I want to play a clip real quick from Eric Swalwell, a.k.a. the dealer, a.k.a. the man you don't want to stand behind if you see him out in public. But here's what Eric Swalwell said about Joe Biden and the whole University of Delaware records.
Do you believe Joe Biden?
I believe that he has a right to defend himself, but I also believe that the accuser has a right to make her claims, and the vice president calling for an investigation into any records that may exist is the right thing to do.
So, but first of all, on the records issue, I thought he was not clear on that. So you saying definitively that the University of Delaware, Mika Brzezinski asked this several times, should they search, they have Joe Biden's records from his Senate days, should they search Tara Reade's name and find out whether there are records of a complaint, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
That's from Eric Swalwell.
Just now
on Fox News with Ed Henry. Eric Swalwell, the one who dealt it, of course. But look, I mean, this is when you've Eric Swalwell's not someone who's some anti-establishment rabble-rouser in the Democratic ranks. He's someone who, in his late 30s, views himself as having a big future in Democratic politics. These are shots across the bow. And if he's saying this and going on Fox News and saying it, what do you think other Democrats are saying?
Is this Eric Swalwell doing his pass the torch thing again? Is that, you know, he did that whole thing in the debate. He decided that, hey, I don't want to play with the old Democrat Party. Is he digging the knife in here because he thinks it's his turn?
I would actually say that these guys are trying to protect their reputations. Let's face it. I mean, these are, you know, we may disagree with them, but they're not unreasonable people. They realize that history is going to judge them, and what they did to Brett Kavanaugh has to apply to Joe Biden.
What Swalwell, I think that's a great point, Jack. Swalwell knows that when he runs for president or senator or governor or something in the future, they're going to pull up every interview and did you believe Tara Reade or not? And they're going to play every clip. And this is a very woke answer by Eric Swalwell that he'll be able to clip and say, see, I stood up and I've been very consistent on this. And so this is very much about Eric Swalwell, but also it shows just how little respect there is for Joe Biden at the top of that ticket.
All right, no special this evening, but we encourage you all to share the show. Make sure as many new people are subscribing as possible. War Room Pandemic, hashtag War Room Pandemic. Jack Maxey, Jason Miller, Raheem Kassam, Stephen K. Bannon will be back with us in the next coming days. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow. War Room Pandemic, episode 155. We'll see you then.